Welcome to Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the fifth dimension.
Welcome to another episode of Merkaba Chakras podcast. Today, we bring some aloha to you through interviewing spiritual teacher Stewart Blackburn. Now, Stewart offers many tools for people that he has learned in his decades of studying diverse healing modalities, and especially the art of conscious manifestation. In his latest book, It's Time to Come Home with Kindness and Compassion, we come back to ourselves. Stewart Blackburn explains how the ultimate human exploration is knowing your true inner self. And from that knowing, we create the universe. Stewart, welcome to Merkaba Chakras.
So much. I'm delighted to be here, Vaughn.
Yeah, I have heard a lot about the material that you offer, and I have been going through your website, and I do love a little bit of aloha every day. So, but yes, and I have been studying some of the modalities as well through my research. So I just was very delighted to have this interview, and there is so much to discuss. But today, you're going to give us some insight into our true selves so that we can become conscious manifestors of our greater realities. So, I want to start with the first question for you. Now,
Okay.
your journey to understanding these manifestation tools to teach students about is unique. Can you tell us more about how your spiritual awakening pulled you into being a spiritual teacher in Hawaii?
The primary way that I got here was to follow the um, the spiritual teachings of all kinds that I could find. Anybody who had anything interesting to say, I would pursue, and that included, not only Western religions but Eastern religions and things like Tantra. Um, and I found that while I liked Tantra very much, the classical Tantra primarily, it was the shamanism that drew me the most because it is the most empowered of any of these um, kinds of spiritual teachings, spiritual paths. So I studied different kinds of shamanism until I came across a shamanism called Huna that is based on teachings from Hawaii, that is very empowered, but it is not based on fear. That is to say, it doesn't assume that the world is a dangerous place that you need to protect yourself from. It assumes that the world is a beautiful, safe place that has difficulties and challenges that we rise up and meet. It's very important then to stay in as positive an energy as possible so that we can, in fact, create and manifest what it is that we desire. So it was this kind of shamanism that really struck me as the easiest way to learn about conscious manifestation. Now, there are many other ways of doing it, and I'm not suggesting this is the only or even the best. It is the one that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
But conscious manifestation is essentially what we're all after. Everybody is trying to make their lives better. And that is, of course, the motivation for doing anything, is we want to feel better than we currently do. So we try to make things happen to our advantage. So learning how to do that is essentially what all religions and all spiritual paths are about.
Mm-hmm.
Some are more successful than others.
I would definitely agree. Yes, and And that's like the whole purpose of this, is to provide all the different ways in which you can connect to consciousness and be an integrated self, because that is the leading edge experience, is to have spirit or consciousness integrated into the physical so that you can experience creation firsthand in the best possible way possible. Because we could all be in spirit, but we cannot always be spirit in body. So let me ask you this. What is heart-centered shamanism, and how can people use it to manifest a life full of aloha? And I love the wonderful aloha spirit behind you, because that's the picture of your garden. So how can we create that in our life and have that kind of abundance?
Well, the key piece here is spirit, and you talked about bringing spirit into our lives. And so I approach it from a slightly different point of view. That we are spirit, that's who we are, that our conscious mind and our bodies are function, that is to say, they are created by our spirit. So essentially, we are trying to get back into an understanding of who we are as spirit and understand why we are manifesting the things that we are already manifesting. So we want to change what we're manifesting. We want to learn how to do it better.
Right,
But
right.
we're already doing all the manifestation.
Right. We're already manifesting, and many people are, but what I find is, and I'm not sure if you find this in your work as well, is people are unconsciously manifesting, and what they're typically manifesting is their unconscious fears. So before people can get into being a conscious manifester of wonderful things in their life, how can they not create out of their fears? I mean, what have you
Well,
found in working with heart-centered shamanism?
heart-centered shamanism basically is my term for a peaceful, uh, love-based kind of shamanism. That is to say, the ability to create what it is that you want without getting into fear mode, without trying to protect yourself. So it is largely based on understanding how it is that we sabotage ourselves.
And what are some of the ways in which people sabotage their own creations? Like let's say somebody is working on creating, a positive outcome in their relationship or their career, whatever they're working on at the time. But then self-sabotage is a common thing that comes up. So how can people recognize not to self-sabotage so they can fully get the full experience and go all the way to the end of that experience?
Good. Yes, good. Great question. The one of the most important things is that people have lots of expectations of other people and expectations of themselves. Expectations are very tricky things, and we're not taught in school how they work and how to use them properly. But expectations of other people tend to be disastrous.
Right,
But
right.
expectations
What kind
tend
of expectations do you typically come across that most people
well,
have in
most
common?
people have expectations that their parents should have been better, should
Oh,
have grown
yes.
up better. And so they go around being angry that their parents didn't do what they couldn't have done.
Right, right. Everybody wants Hallmark parents, but not everybody wins the parent lottery.
Yeah, well, not only that, but we seem to think that they should be something relatively perfect, not
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that they were doing the very best they could.
Mm-hmm.
And we have decided that because our problems are that we have any problems, that it's our parents' fault. So we blame them.
So we
And
don't take responsibility of our own.
yeah,
So being conscious is, in my mind, when you're conscious, you become self-responsible for your own well-being. You take self-initiative and you put focus and intention on the things that you do. And so when things happen, it is not a byproduct of everybody else. It's because
right.
they're not doing the physical action that you're doing to create that outcome. Is that, what do you say about that when people want to go, oh, it's because of this, oh, it's because of that,
Well,
it's because of this?
so there are two things that I want to say then. One is that um, criticism doesn't work. of
Mhm.
yourself or anybody else.
Yeah.
It does not change somebody else's behavior to the positive. It'll only make other people unhappy, and it'll make yourself unhappy when you're criticizing yourself. It
Mhm.
doesn't work.
Mhm.
So that's one of the biggest things to be mindful of if you are on a spiritual path. Appreciate yourself and appreciate others, and
Right,
take
right.
responsibility for the fact that you are creating your own reality. Now, we know this phrase, we've been using it for the last 50, 60 years. But another way of putting it is the world is what you think it is.
Mhm.
You are looking at your world from your own particular point of view. And it is from that point of view that you evaluate everything. And if you take responsibility for your life and say, okay, somehow I created this situation. My car broke down here. Okay, what is it that I'm learning here? Why have I done this to myself? And recognize that you can learn from every one of these lessons and take advantage of that and become much more of a conscious being. But when you start blaming the world, then you lose your power. So you want to get your power back by taking responsibility.
Mhm.
Those are
Yeah,
two major things. Take responsibility and never criticize.
right. And all that criticism for art can become excuses and lower your frequency. The kind of a time wasters. Instead of focusing on the solution and working towards, okay, a car broke down. Let's go look for a mechanic in the area. Let's go look at how we can finance this, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of spending the time to work your way out of this and get it resolved so you can move on to the next best thing, you just spin your wheels for much longer than you need to in order to learn that next lesson. Is that what we're doing? We're spinning our wheels in our life over and over again, not really getting to the next journey that we're supposed to go to?
Oh, I don't think that there's any part that's really spinning wheels.
Mm.
I think we're all learning all the time. Sometimes a little faster than at other times. But one of the things that I think makes it go faster is to recognize that suffering, which a number of religions have built their religions around, particularly Buddhism, is not inevitable. It's optional. Pain is inevitable, but
Mm.
suffering is optional.
You can
And
suffer less. We can suffer less, for sure.
we don't have to suffer at all. It all depends on how we are looking at things.
Mhm.
Suffering is a function of the story you're telling yourself. Change your story, you change your life.
True, true. So, how can people use the magic of Huna to consciously create a more satisfying life full of love and gratitude, and moving away from falling into the pitfalls of suffering and putting yourself further into that, or away from the pitfalls of criticism and blaming others? How can they, consciously manifest of loving gratitude?
Terrific. One of the things to remember is that we're really talking about energy, manipulating energy, how we are using our thoughts and our feelings to craft the reality that we want. So we need to remind ourselves that what we are thinking is having a large influence of what we're about to create. And the energy that we create with is our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to be mindful of how that energy is being used. We know that energy will flow where attention goes. That is to say, what we're putting our attention on is what we are energizing all the time. So the first thing then is to be mindful of what we are focusing on. We want to focus on the things that keep our energy high and let go of the focus on things that bring our energy down.
Can you repeat that? Because that last statement, that is very important.
That what we focus on, if we're going to focus on things that bring us joy, then that is what we're energizing. If we are focusing on what makes us miserable, that's what we're energizing.
Okay.
And so we have to learn how to take charge of our focus. It's the most powerful power you have, is your
And
focus.
it's so basic, and yet so many people really naturally gravitate towards the bad news bears, towards the things that aren't working in their life, towards the things that not getting to where they want to be yet. And so they continue to focus on the lower vibe negativity. and then wonder, why haven't I gotten to where I wanted to yet? So that is so important what he's saying. Focus on working on the good stuff and put less attention on the negativity in your life, because they will fall away if you don't put so much negativity in those lower vibe aspects. Now, let me ask you this, Stewart. How can people get to know their inner self so that they can become empowered manifestors? Okay.
Good. Yes. So the easiest way to get to know your inner self is to sit quietly and pay attention, and just by being interested in what your inner self is, who your inner self is, you will connect. When you connect every time you look at beauty, you connect every time you enjoy what you're doing, you connect every time you connect with somebody else and enjoy the connection that you've got. Feeling good, humor, these are all things that connect you to your inner self.
Let me
But,
ask you something about that,
all right.
that connection. Because connection is what a lot of people try to do in when they spend time with somebody, with a family, with their friends, with their significant other, with their pets, etc. We try to make connections on social media, and a lot of people make a lot of connections, but they're not real connections, and so they feel a little empty, like they ate a lot of cake and they're still hungry. So connection is just like it's the energy of life, and it is what all of us, I think, are trying to do in everything that we do. So, in working on building those positive connections that really empower you and drive you to want to do more of it, how can we work on building those type of connections in our work, in our personal relationships with our spouse or our significant other, companion? In the connections that we have with our children. What are some tips in trying to build those connections in these different areas of our life that we're really struggling to um, have flow better?
Okay. Well, aloha is about connection. You wonderfully brought that in. So aloha is that connection, that loving connection that feels so good.
Mm-hmm.
And criticism, since we've already talked about it, breaks aloha immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks that connection.
Yeah, they've proven that scientifically in a lot of research on mindfulness and meditation and other kinds of research, that negativity is kind of like it breaks it breaks your life force, and then positivity builds more of it. So yes.
Okay, but the other aspect of it that's worth paying attention to then is the pleasure of connection. That is to say, everything you do is around pleasure, about feeling better. And so the more you savor the joy and love you have connecting to somebody or some flower or some animal or to your inner self or the stars, whatever it is, savor the connection, the feeling, and the energy of that feeling, because that connects you or brings into awareness your connection to your inner self. And so by exploring the things that feel really good, I mean, there are lots of pleasures of the soul that are worth exploring. And by doing that, you get to know who you are as a spirit. Ultimately, you will want to integrate really your sense of who you are in this physical body with the sense of who you are as a spirit.
Right,
And
right.
really sense that you are this wonderful being before you came into this world, the being that you will be when you leave this world. You're here for a time to do some specific things and to understand how to manipulate energy. Well,
Right.
then you stay as spirit learning how to do that.
Right, right. I mean, in essence, I mean, all traditions go back to the basic foundation that I think a lot of people, um, struggle with, is that when we're in our bodies, we so much forget that we are a soul having a human experience. We are energy. We've always been energy, and in the energy has manifested in this form in this lifetime, but that energy, like prana, has always existed before and after this experience is over with. So with that, people sometimes they really get caught up in the physical form, um, of kind of the limitations. And so, how can people change the stories of being a victim of their personal circumstances, which they continue to replay in their minds, and then learn and grow from it to reconstruct a new story, which ultimately changes the history of their past? And this is really, really important because I don't think people fully understand that when they change their present, um, viewpoint about something, not seeing a victim, they really do change their past history. Can you explain that in terms of Huna?
Sure. It's as many people understand, it's the story that you tell yourself that makes you hurt. It isn't what happened that makes you hurt. That happened a long time ago. It's you telling that story right now in the present that makes you hurt. And so you are hurting yourself over and over and over again. So the trick to this is to tell a different story. Generally, you can tell a different story by saying, okay, something happened. I didn't like it, but I learned something from it. And in that sense, it has been a valuable experience for me. I don't have to go through it again. I now turn my attention to the next thing that I want to learn or experience.
Right, right. And
And
so for somebody who, go ahead.
It's a matter of learning how to take charge of what you're focusing on. Not an easy thing for many people.
Right. Can you give us some examples of how to apply that? So let's say somebody has issue with their traumatic childhood, like child abuse. Let's take child abuse or child neglect. Um, how do they change their frequency by seeing a different story?
Okay, we start with not calling it traumatic.
Okay.
Traumatic is a dramatic word that has a lot of energy to it, that something terrible happened, irreparable, and makes the whole change of story more difficult. So the child will have to feel. This is one of the things about this work, because you have to feel everything. That means you have to hang out in it, but you have to be able to feel and say, okay, I really didn't like being hit as a child or raped as a child. I hated that. But that was then. I don't have to let that run my life now. I can look back and say, okay, that hurt, and I'm not ever going to let that happen again. I've learned a whole lot about compassion in the course of this, and I am inspired by my experiences to help other people who have had that experience and are trying to figure out how to deal with it.
Right, right. And let me ask you something, because people oftentimes think compassion is done onto other people. What about giving compassion to yourself and replaying that story over and over again? When somebody replays those stories that are not beneficial to their current and future self, what do they do to themselves? What do they do to their energy?
Well, telling a story that makes you feel bad about yourself will always hurt you. So you need to tell the story in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. You can tell any story you want. You can change any story in any way. The story is up to you. It's your story. It's not. We're not talking about absolute truth here. This is a subjective reality that affects how you feel about life.
Right, right. I would definitely, I definitely understand that, and I hope people who listen to this understand it, because I do hypnosis here in Seattle, and I get some people come in for neglect or a childhood that was not very favorable, and what they come in looking at it like this was a very negative thing that happened to me. It's impacted me in all these different ways. But then when they go through hypnosis, what is revealed to them is that they are continuing to punish themselves for something that happened to them, that was, done by somebody else. And what they could look at it as is they overcame it and they learn from it, because they're not doing it to their children and repeating that cycle, to cause and bring this on to the next generation. And because they have strong enough to overcome that, they broke the chains of this conditioning that has been done, generation after generation in some of these cases, and able to educate others to not repeat this pattern. So you can look at it as a victim and continue to hurt yourself by continuing to replay that story, or you can look at it in a different way as kind of the person that overcame a very, very strong thing that most people in that family line was not able to overcome, which will help a lot of people. And if you look at it the other way, it's actually very empowering. And I found a lot of clients become very empowered with that. And is that kind of what that spirit of aloha and finding compassion in yourself, that's the pathway in which people need to apply to their stories so they become less of a victim?
Well, absolutely. So you start with that compassion, saying, okay, I see the pain and I want to do something about it. And then you be kind to yourself. Most people are not kind to themselves at all. And in fact, they're downright nasty to themselves. And that needs to stop. That sense of kindness to oneself, to be compassionate and loving and caring about oneself is the most healing thing I know. And so it's a matter of not making yourself feel bad about yourself. All of this, the trauma that we're talking about here, it makes you feel bad about yourself. By understanding what you are feeling and understanding that you want to feel good, and it's important to do the things that make you feel good and make you feel good about yourself, is the key to the healing here. And so to let go of all the brutality that we do to ourselves is the major thing. That's where the cruelty is.
Yes, and I see that all the time, and I'm sure you see that all the time in your work as well, where people, if you really have compassion and love for yourself, you're not going to spread negativity or hate or any of that kind of stuff onto other people, because you can't be what you are not. So if you're a loving and compassionate person to yourself, that's how you're going to be to everybody else around you. If you're mean and you're you have negative sabotage and talk, etc., that's what you're doing to yourself. You're just kind of projecting to other people what you are. So what I always say to people is, if you split yourself into two and you made another version of yourself, and every time you said negative things or done negative things to yourself or replayed a negative storyline over and over again, that's what you're doing to the other person. And if you actually saw that physically in real time, you would probably stop. But because you don't have that separation and you don't see yourself doing it to yourself, people get into that cycle. So, with that, what advice do you have for people who have worked on this and they've changed their frequency so much that their inner work, that their past history reality has changed into a new parallel reality? What do you say to those people who, I did so much inner work that now my mom is a different person, my dad is literally a different person,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Everything in your world changes.
Yeah. And now they're like, I don't know how to exist in this new reality that has manifested.
And that's the thing. You're going to have to get used to two major things. One is things are constantly going to be changing for you. And so you have to get used to change and just expect change.
Consciousness will change your reality on you depending on your inner frequency. So we're going to have to get used to that.
And the other thing is intensity. Most people equate intensity with pain, but intensity is actually quite different. Pain is a combination of intensity and fear. Sometimes you might want to play with that and look at it. But if you get rid of the fear, the intensity will, eventually send out more endorphins, and you will just enjoy that. But people who feel overwhelmed find that they have reached the limit of their tolerance for intensity, and that's what overwhelm is. But all of the great feelings of this world, and that's what life is about, feelings, are intense. So the more people can get used to intensity, not shy away from it, but embrace intensity, the happier they can be. Because happiness is intense, joy is intense, love is intense. So it's a matter of feeling even the bad things, but you don't have to hang out there. Just be willing to feel them when they come up, and then move on to accepting the intensity of the great joys and loves of the world.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that because, one of the things in the spiritual space that is common is they just want to look at love and light. They want to just look at the positive stuff. They don't want to look at their inner demons, their dark side, the dark night of the soul. They just want to not ignore and just continue to focus. And so it just keeps on piling and piling and piling, and then blows up. And they're going, I'm a spiritual person, but why is all this old stuff coming up for me? I'm spiritual. I should be thinking all positive stuff all the time. I should never have any negativity. But on the flip side, in your work and in my work, and in many other people's work in the space, what comes up is, if it's brought up to you, it is for you to transcend, for you to work on and learn from it, so you don't create that. And so when you have no negativity to continue to create from, because you've learned that lesson, what there's left is positive things to create from. So, I bring that up because, the Buddhist tradition and many indigenous traditions worldwide, they participate in the 2012 awakening ceremonies to close out a 26 million year cosmic cycle of the Earth's rotation and welcome in a higher energy to the Earth of unity. And so we leapfrog deeper into this higher parallel reality. And because of that, things are manifesting faster. And many people in this space have been saying that things are manifesting faster. My fears are manifesting faster. My abundance is manifesting faster. So what tips can you offer to people who are still unconsciously creating out of 3D paranoia in this higher state of energy where things manifest faster?
I would suggest, for me, the easiest way to deal with that is to look at everything in terms of energy, because they are creating with energy. And so if they pay attention, or if we pay attention to what we are feeling, our feelings are our experience of energy, right? So if we pay attention to our feelings, we are paying attention to our energy. So we are manifesting with our thoughts and our energy. So if we pay attention to how we are feeling, we're paying attention to the energy with which we are manifesting all the time. Now, our feelings generally follow our thoughts. So if we are mindful of what we are thinking, then we can be mindful of the energy that we are creating with. And so it makes it much simpler, rather than thinking about the qualities and all of that. What's my energy today? What energy am I creating my life with? Because each moment is that we are experiencing is the creation, the function of the thoughts and feelings we've just been having.
Mm-hmm.
So simply pay attention to what we're thinking and the energy that we are creating with takes it down to the bare basics. And by being mindful of that, it's much easier to say, oh, my energy is lousy, and look what I'm creating with it. I'll change my energy because I can.
Yeah, yeah. It is funny how some people who try so hard to work on fixing a negative thing in their life, but they spend so much time musing about what went wrong, how it's going wrong, how it's not going right. And then the struggle becomes even more real, even harder. It is kind of funny. And yet it's like, how far down this did you want to go before you finally realize the lesson and address it and work from it? So on the flip side, going away from people who create a 3D paranoia, on the flip side, how can people who've moved beyond that and are consciously manifesting overabundance in these higher energies and they're feeling overwhelmed about how to balance all this good stuff, how can those people focus their intentions on the things that they want to experience because they have an overabundance of good stuff coming their way so much faster? So
Well, you
that's
used the word overwhelm. So I just defined it, and I think that it's worth paying attention to. The overwhelm is the limit of the tolerance for that intensity. So I would suggest to you that people who are in that kind of state recognize that they can open to greater intensity of this and can become more powerful creators by handling greater intensity.
and what tips can you offer for those people? I'm one of those people. I have an overabundance issue.
Okay.
And it is a different issue than somebody who's constantly creating out of fears. But
Absolutely.
but
So
how
let's
can
use your energy to help other people. And if you run out of people to help, let me know.
No, but yeah, but I get a lot of clients as well through my hypnosis, and through different interviews who they're like, okay, I know that we're in the fifth dimension. I know that we're in the higher dimensions because never before in my life have so much good stuff happening. It just synchronicities all over the place. I don't have to work that hard. It's just, but now it's almost like, how do I focus? So what tips for those people can you give them so they can get the best experience out of the things they're working on? So let me give you an example. I have clients that come through and they're computer programmers and they're going, okay, I have all this great idea, but we have to get something to the market and we have to finish the project. So how do we focus on all these great ideas?
So you focus on what feeling do you want? Because that's what you're trying to manifest, feelings. So you decide what feelings you want. Are you after, or is the programmer after people feeling satisfied and happy that they are more productive? Is that what, or that they can make more money? What is it that the programmer is trying to help people do? What
Right.
feelings do the customers are they supposed to be able to achieve with that product?
Right. Let me ask you another thing too, because I'm in Seattle and we have a lot of IT people here in a lot of different areas. And now that we're doing online school for some people, and that might be a future aspect of the curriculum, etc. Um, one of the things is a lot of the IT professionals that I talk to in my field and the ones that come in for hypnosis, many of them, they want to do good. They want to help people make that connection. They want to know that the work that they're doing is making the world a better place, not a worse place. But the algorithm has kind of served what they want, and so it's going to serve people more what they want. And if they're just constantly manifesting out of 3D fears and anxiety, then they're going to get more of the negativity on their news feed, on all the different apps that they work on. And so that's not what the programmers wanted. They just created it so that they can help people connect and enjoy the product, and also make some money. But the algorithm is designed to serve you what you want, and the customers spend all the time on these negative things, and so they get more of the negative things. So it's kind of like a catch-22. What do you say to those people working in IT who's going, it
Well,
went out of control? How do we
so
fix
it depends
this?
on what the individual programmers are after for themselves. What feelings do they want for themselves? Okay, obviously they want to help people, but IT is not the only way to help people, and it is not the only way to connect with people. So they need to be mindful of their own emotional um, satisfaction. Are they able to take care of themselves emotionally with what they're doing? Are they
Mm-hmm.
being nurtured emotionally, energetically by the work? And so that's a question they'll have to answer for themselves.
Yeah, I really see, Stewart. I see a lot. I mean, I'm here in Seattle, so the West Coast, Seattle, Silicon Valley, has an interesting aspect of the work that they do. A lot of the people in these professions that I've come across from my work, they're very high vibe. They're trying to be very conscious. They're trying to work on their awakening and spiritual development and really increase their energy and be a more conscious creator, in themselves, in their life, and in the work. But what they find is they become almost like a slave to their work, because they're constantly in the rat race of the algorithm of trying to put out the next product, and the intention that they got into the work has fallen out the window. So many of them are trying to find a way to reset and get back to the roots of why they went into it in the first place. So how can they use their skills and knowledge to enter into other industries and help people interact with life more than just sitting there on their social media, on their apps, on the technology? Because the technology that many of them created were to help assist us into having a much easier, better life, but it's kind of working against the intention. So they're like, well, how do we do this? And so that's what I find in my hypnosis. And
I was a student radical back in the 1960s. And I actually spent months driving around the country, meeting every new left person I could find. And at the end of it, I found that these people, many of them were idealists, but more than a majority of them seemed to not be interested in changing the world. They were interested in changing who ran the world.
mm,
And so it was clear to me then, as it is today, that in order to change the world, you have to change yourself. So I would
exactly.
suggest to those people that are coming to you that the more they change themselves, that is to say, find the peace within themselves, find the compassion within themselves, and then find the joy in themselves, in their inner self, and exploring their inner self, that's where they will find the most powerful way to change the world. So they start by changing themselves, by getting to know who they are and being okay with that, finding their peace within, and then operating from there, from that place where they can be peaceful in everything they do.
Right, right. Oh, I was going to say something. I wanted to say, the golden age of humanity is full of people who take self-responsibility for their well-being without being made to do so. Okay. And like you say, they've integrated their consciousness into the experience. And, as we move forward, I think people are going to realize that their self-worth is not measured in 3D terms, such as how expensive is your car or your house or what your status is. Instead, it's going to be how spiritual you are. You know, how much energy do you radiate? How do you consciously create something with your energy? These are the questions. These are the things that the next experience and the next generation is going to be focusing on. I really truly see that in your work and other people's work. And you know, with our advanced energy, our advanced Merkabas, we travel and we see the stars and the multiverse, you know, with ourselves. So, you know, there's just so much material that you can go into. Do you have any last messages that you want to leave people with?
I do. I definitely do. I want to bring it down to some very basic things. That is to say, in terms of success, and how do we measure success? Pleasure is the measure of success. Are you enjoying your life? Very simple. Do you feel good? That's what you need to be paying attention to. If you're not paying attention to how good you feel, or whether you're feeling good at all, then you're missing the whole point. You're missing life. Life is about learning how to feel good and mastering the energy to find ways to feel even better. So the measuring stick has to be feeling good, which is what pleasure is.
Right, right. Stuart, I think we've given people lots of good nuggets of information to consider today, and for how they can construct their reality and how they can walk the path of being a conscious manifester in the higher dimensions of Earth that we're already in. And so, everybody, if you want more information about Stewart Blackburn's offerings and his work and how it can help you, go visit his website. It's stewartblackburn.com. And Stewart, thank you kindly for joining me here at Merkaba Chakras today for this great interview. And for everyone else, thank you for listening to another enlightening conversation. Until next time, mahalo.
Aloha. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the fifth dimension. For more information about today's guest, please go to the show description. For more information about Vaughn's metaphysical work, please go to merkabachakras.com. The views expressed today are for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or replace any medical or legal advice. Don't forget to subscribe for more interviews about the fifth dimension. Until we meet again, blessings.